Randy Wagstaff immediately became one of my favorite characters in The Wire, not simply because his arc has a tremendous impact on the story in Season 4, but also because Randy is someone that I see a lot of myself in when I was a kid. Dookie, another favorite character of mine, is a kid who never seems to be able to catch a break. Both of these characters exemplify what happens when kids, especially young boys, have no sense of guidance or purpose in their life. Randy comes across as very likable, as he always greets his friends with a handshake and initiates conversation. When he first meets Prez, he comes across as a bit of a shyster, not unlike Prop Joe when he was younger. However, as we get to know the real Randy, we see that at his core he's a naive young man who wants to do the right thing and does have a big heart. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the coldness that Michael has, and he doesn't have an adult that can protect him like Naaman, so he ends up like others such as Dookie, another failure of the system. In one of the first scenes with Randy, we get the sense that he's different from other kids his age. We can see that although he's not the dominant figure of the group, he has enough influence to get the other kids to go along with his ideas. During his scheme to catch a white homing pigeon in order to make some money, the attempt is interrupted by Dookie breaking a bottle, which ends up scaring the birds away. A small scuffle breaks out between Dookie and Naaman, and while the other kids deride Dookie, Randy does not. In fact, he appears to feel bad. As the other kids leave, Randy stays behind and gently scolds Dookie for scaring the birds away. But it seems like this is more of just a way to break the tension, as Dookie's demeanor immediately changes to a positive one and asks Randy if he'd like to see his bug bomb, to which Randy declines, stating he has to go. Before he departs, Dookie informs Randy that homing pigeons have metal rings around their leg, which he learned from cleaning Nemo's coop. The boys go their separate ways, but not without exchanging grateful smiles. Randy for the information, and Dookie because he understands that Randy was really just checking to make sure he was okay. Towards the end of the first episode, Randy is again hustling, this time trying to sell candy, when little Kevin tells Randy to inform Lex that a girl wants to meet him at the playground that night. Randy briefly questions why, but Kevin just tells him it's because he doesn't want Bodhi to bother him anymore that day. Randy does as he's told, which leads to several serious consequences for many characters later in the show. When Randy finds out what happens to Lex, he's clearly upset about it. At the end of the episode, he sits alone on the stoop with a heavy stare on his face. So in just one episode, we get a strong picture of who both boys are. In some sense, they're opposite sides of the same coin, which is why they appear to be the support system for each other throughout the fourth season. Randy had the intelligence and work ethic to be one of those smart pawns, but he lacked intuition, was sensitive, and could be easily manipulated, which meant others could take advantage of him as they saw fit. Even during seemingly mundane situations, someone that was in a power position is usually able to manipulate Randy. In the fourth episode of Season 4, Cuddy comes to the principal's office to apply for a job. At the same time, Randy is in the office where he is blamed for tagging the walls of the school. Randy tells Miss Donnelly that she knows he doesn't do that kind of thing, and I suspect she does as well. However, she does know that Randy can be manipulated into giving up the people who did do it, so she threatens to call his foster mom, which she knows is the one thing he fears. While she is trying to get him to talk, Cuddy also gives him a look. It's unclear if Cuddy was advocating one way or another for Randy to actually tell Miss Donnelly. That's up for debate. However, when Cuddy shakes his head when Randy is about to snitch, it may signify that regardless of whether he told Miss Donnelly or not who did the tagging, in a sense, he still failed the test because he revealed his weak spot to the principal, which she will use again later to manipulate him. This is the crux of Randy's character. He's not his own person. Like the other kids, he's stuck between two worlds. However, he doesn't have the things necessary to thrive, let alone survive in his world. He doesn't have a last name, nor does he have the instincts to make it on his own. He is, in some sense, the perfect sacrificial pawn. The difference between Randy and Dookie was Randy's major flaws was his innocence and naivety, whereas Dookie's was more his incompetence. Dookie struggled with just about everything he tried. He dropped out of school, couldn't find a job, didn't make friends easily, couldn't box or shoot a gun. Randy also has influence within his group of friends and is the one who gets the group to go along with his schemes, such as catching pigeons, fighting the terrorist kids, or handing out political flyers. On the flip side, Dookie has a lot of empathy and insight. While the rest of the group believes Chris is changing people into zombies, Dookie knows what is really happening to them. When Randy is feeling down, Dookie apologizes for his part in laughing at him. After a fight breaks out in the classroom, he does his best to comfort the girl who is being picked on. Another way the two differ is Randy has a clear direction of where he wants to go in life. Randy has an entrepreneurial mindset and is quick to pick up on business concepts, such as when he was able to use the odds and dice to win money for his candy business. He also shows he understands the concepts of profit margins when he looks up candy prices on the computer. In addition, when Presbo asks him what he wants to do, he immediately replies he is going to own his own store. Compare this to Dookie, who has no real life skills that can benefit him and even asks Michael what he would be good at. There are a few scenes which really highlight the characters' general approach towards life, particularly when they don't have the support of their friends. These scenes can give us a glimpse into how the two characters may turn out in the future after the show's conclusion. One of my favorite scenes, which in my opinion really showcases the type of person Randy is the scene where Randy's crew wants to bail on him after finding out he got paid up front to pass out flyers. However, Randy insists on finishing the job he was paid to do and continues to work even when the rest leave him behind. The foreshadowing for Dookie is a bit more subtle, but there are hints as to where his life was headed. In episode 11 of season 4, Dookie orders rice and turkey grease at a restaurant, causing the other kids to laugh at him. When he asks why his order is so funny, Michael tells him the turkey grease he ordered is what drunks get because it makes them throw up so they can go back to drinking again. It's a small hint, but Dookie remarking that it's what his mother always eats is evidence that he is part of a vicious cycle without even knowing it. Around the same time, Randy has also become part of the system after Carver was unable to take him in as a foster. In another display of innocence, he offers Carver some cash to help out, much like a child offering their parents their allowance to help pay for rent. He also doesn't understand that he's part of a system of failure as well. We only see Randy briefly in season 5 in one short scene in which Bunk tries to strong-arm him into talking about Lex's murder. His tactics fail as Randy is standoffish. It's clear he feels let down and betrayed by the system. However, it also appears that this aggression is more of a survival response or defense mechanism as a way to protect himself. As he is climbing the stairs to leave, he looks back at Bunk with the same hurt look he had when he thanked Carver for trying. This is the last time we see of him. Dookie's life is even more of a mess. After having lived with the Junkman for a while, he's become not only destitute, but an addict and a liar as well. He even goes so far as to con his old teacher, Mr. Prez, for money which he uses to buy drugs after promising to enroll in school. This act basically severs all connections he had with his old life. The last time we see Dookie, he is a full-on drug user, his life a complete wreck. It's difficult to determine where the boys would end up in the future. Dookie is in a much tougher spot than Randy in my opinion. Some people speculate that he becomes a new Bubbles, but he doesn't necessarily have the same resources available to him that Bubbles had. For example, Bubbles also has a sister, and though their relationship is strained, she does provide him some sort of relief. We also don't know how much value he would be able to provide to the police as an informant, since that is something that would need to occur in specific circumstances. Dookie also burned the one bridge of support he had with Prez, which left him more isolated. Unfortunately, statistically speaking, it's much more likely that Dookie succumbs to the downward spiral and cannot escape it and in turn never recovers. As for Randy, some say he becomes the new Prop Joe. Others have said he becomes the new Bodie. I tend to have a bit of a more positive outlook for him simply because he has options. He also has life skills which he could use to get himself out of his situation, as well as a strong work ethic and realistic goals. For example, owning his own store is not out of the question for him regardless of growing up in the system. Randy has a good head on his shoulders, he cares about doing a good job even when he doesn't have to, and finally, he's never burnt any bridges. Randy also seems to respect authority, so there's no reason to believe he can't gain support later on. This leads me to believe that whatever Randy is going through at the end of the show, he would find a way to make his dreams a reality. So, what can we learn from these two young men, and how can we as leaders use it to help us? When we look at our own lives, how many of us know people, including ourselves, that have no direction or sense of purpose in their lives? Many times when we don't feel motivated, it's not just because we don't have clear-cut goals, it's because we have no structure or no solid plan. We just do what we're told to do because we're told to do it, and then when things don't go the right way or the way we want them to, we turn to people that are incapable of helping us. This in turn sets us up for failure or even potential manipulation. Neither Dookie or Randy had a personal structure in their lives, which is to be expected as they're only in middle school. However, compare them to both Namond and Michael, who did have someone to give them structure, and they both became very capable in their own paths. Think back to when Miss Anna, Randy's foster mother, was speaking to Carver about what was going on at Randy's school. She says, "The child has exercised such poor judgment in both cases." When I was watching that scene, I thought to myself, well, what was she expecting him to do? A peer telling you to go tell another peer to meet someone doesn't exactly signal any alarm bells, and although you could argue that he should have known that being a lookout while 3 middle schoolers are trying to have sex was not a good decision, the most he could have done was said no and not gotten involved. However, we're talking about an impressionable teenager here, and other than Michael, I would be hard-pressed to think any of the other boys would have also said no. But here's where the rubber meets the road. In both of these circumstances, I think it has to be asked is, why did little Kevin and the other kids choose Randy to help them, as opposed to asking anyone else? A strong possibility is that they all knew Randy would do it without question, and they all knew they just had to offer him a bit of money and he would go along with it. In other words, as I said before, he's easy to manipulate. I could picture the 2 boys asking themselves who they thought they should get to be the lookout, and one of them saying, "Let's get Randy, he'll do it, just give him a few bucks." More evidence of this is the scene where the political activist gives Randy the job of posting flyers. All he does is hand Randy a bit of cash and tells him not to fail him, and Randy willingly and without question happily agrees to go along with it. He doesn't look at what the flyers say, and he doesn't even look at how much money he got paid. He just does what he's told without question. So again, it has to be asked, with all the people walking around, why does the man pick Randy to do it? As for Dookie, he runs into issues because he is incompetent in everything he tries. He can't shoot, he can't fight, he doesn't get respect from others on the corner. In a scene where Michael is teaching him to shoot, he tells Dookie people are always going to test him. Even if he could shoot, that would mean he would probably be tested even more, and once he pulls his gun out, he couldn't have any doubt. Though Dookie is dismayed, Michael tells him he's got other skills because he's smart. However, due to a lack of a guiding hand and a structure for his life, it's hard for him to develop and build on those skills. Having someone like Michael asking him questions like why he wants to do this and giving him honest advice was exactly what he needed, but unfortunately, Michael was not the person he needed to get to the next level. Once Michael was gone, that little bit of structure and guidance he had was completely gone as well. Oftentimes we may come across employees, colleagues, or friends that are seemingly stuck where they're at. Maybe it's a bad relationship, maybe it's problems performing on the job, or maybe they just tend to make the wrong decisions, which puts them in a worse situation. Whatever the case may be, there are things we can do to help. But let's take this into a working environment. Imagine you have an employee who is struggling in their job. If this person is like Randy, or someone who has a lot of skills and a good work ethic, but maybe has made some poor decisions, or doesn't have a lot of confidence, it's important to start with the why. Finding out and trying to understand what the person's thought process was in their decision making is a good place to start. Take Randy for instance. Again, he acted on little to no information and made the decisions that cost him dearly. If the person made decisions with little to no information, find out why they didn't have the information. Was it a failure of them to ask for clarification or more information before they made the decision? Or was it a failure on you to not give them the resources they needed to make a good decision? This leads into learning about what kind of structure does this person have in place. Do they have past experiences to draw upon? Is there a sort of algorithm they can use to make decisions? Do they know who they can go to with questions? Do they have the freedom to make certain decisions on their own? Do they know how to justify their actions? A good structure is built with experience, planning, guidance, and support. If a structure does not have these elements, it is not a good structure. As a leader, it is your job to help people develop their structures so they can become capable and independent on their own. Now let's say you have an employee that's like Dookie. They're a well-intentioned person with a good head on their shoulders, but they struggle with the basics of the job. What can you do? Well, before you decide that this isn't the job for them and seek to terminate, as a leader, it is your responsibility to do what you can for that person. Remember, as a leader and supervisor, it is your responsibility to initiate change. Remember, both Cuddy and Michael both reminded Dookie that he did have skills. Ask yourself, did you do a good job matching the job posting with the expectations of the job? Did you ask the right questions in the interview? It could be a case where the job and the job posting were incompatible, which means it is your responsibility to mitigate that situation by providing extra training and guidance or finding a place where the person's skills would be better suited. These are all things that need to be addressed before you decide to cut ties. I can't tell you the number of times I've worked with different organizations and departments who hire people and give them nothing to work with. No training, no orientation, no processes, no instructions on how to do the job, or anything else. In other words, no structure. Yet it still comes as a shock to management when employees quit, burn out, or end up exiting in high numbers. If a person doesn't have their own structure in place, they will often become dependent on others who become the replacement for that structure. This can lead to problems if the person who is filling the void is no longer able to provide support for whatever reason. When we look at Dookie, he used Michael as a crutch, and as soon as he no longer had Michael, he crumbled. With Randy, once he lost his friends as well as Miss Anna, and even Carver to some extent, he also faltered. Think about a person who is overly dependent upon someone else to help them do their job. If that person were to leave, the dependent employee may feel abandoned and let down, not just because the person they relied upon left, but they may also feel like they were set up for failure. Regardless of why they were dependent on others so much has more to do with them lacking a structure versus them being incapable, lazy, or unwilling. Once a structure is broken beyond repair, things can get out of control quickly. How often have you seen someone who is normally on top of things have a few setbacks, and then before long the situation becomes an unsalvageable train wreck? Dookie starts off this warm-hearted, well-intentioned young man, and in about a year he is homeless and shooting up heroin with junk dealers. Likewise, a disaster can happen to someone's career if they don't have the elements of a good structure in place. As a leader, you're not building their structure for them, but it's your job to give them the tools to build and maintain that structure long after they've left and gone on to other things. If you don't, they'll always be looking to someone else to make things better for them. Remember, one of the differences between a manager and a leader is a manager cares about the person's ability to get the job done right. A leader concerns themselves with the person as a whole, so they are able to function and be productive not only in work, but are able to balance work and life. Now, this is not to say it's your job to deal with the personal lives of your employees, but understanding what they're dealing with in their lives can help you support them and manage their structure. It's always good to do a self-inventory on your own structure. What do you need to know that you don't know? Who do you need to know? Who is in your corner, and who might you need to distance yourself from? Are the people in your life capable of supporting you when you need it? Do you have mentors? Are you getting the guidance you need from supervisors or other authority figures in your life? Unfortunately, we often wait until after something bad happens to do a self-assessment. Just like any mitigation plan, trying out your plan for the first time during a disaster is probably not the best time. You should do it when things are calm and you can adjust as needed. Like Michael told Dookie, people are always going to test you, especially as a leader. They want to see what you're made of and if you're the real deal. People won't follow those who won't practice what they preach, so make sure your structure is intact and then you'll be able to support those around you. Finally, it's important to note that you can't build up someone who doesn't wish to grow. Remember, they are the ones that have to put in the work, and until they're willing to commit to the work, all you can do is be supportive. Randy and Dookie's situations were preventable disasters. Unfortunately, neither had the foundation of a good structure to fall back on, and neither had the guidance to build upon the little they did have. Look at the people around you and try to see where their structure might be weak. As a leader, how can you help them create a stronger structure? Maybe all they need is someone to point them in the right direction. Building and maintaining a strong structure doesn't need to be rocket science. Sometimes it just needs a gentle nudge in the right direction from the right person.